My name is Raphael. I'm 30 years old. This story happened while I was walking through a neighborhood I barely knew. It was a cold night, and the wind howled through the trees. The street was long, with few lights and several abandoned houses. I tried to find a taxi, but it seemed impossible. As I passed one of the houses, I heard a dull knock. I looked at the door, which was ajar. The house seemed empty, but something in the air seemed to pull me towards it. I ignored it and continued walking, but a few meters later, I heard the same knock, now louder. When I turned around, the door was wide open, revealing only darkness inside. "Anyone there?" My voice came out shaky. There was no response. The wind seemed to send a message, but I couldn't understand what it said. I took a step back, but as I did, something flashed inside the house, like a fleeting reflection. I didn't wait to find out what it was and ran away. The sound of banging continued to follow me until I left that neighborhood. I don't know what was in those houses, but, to this day, I avoid even going near the area. My name is Elisa. I'm 26 years old. This story happened on a rainy night while I was walking home. The rain was falling thinly but steadily, and I didn't have an umbrella. The sidewalks were slippery, and water dripped from the eaves of the old houses that lined the street. Everything seemed peaceful until I noticed a peculiar sound, a drip, but it wasn't rain. It was a heavier, rhythmic sound coming from one of the eaves above me. I looked up but saw nothing but falling water. I kept walking, but what seemed to follow me. When I stopped, he stopped too. The dripping felt closer now, as if it were directly behind me. I turned quickly, but the street was deserted. The sound stopped completely, and the silence was so absolute that I could hear my own breathing. Suddenly, I felt something drip onto my shoulder. It was thick, almost sticky. I looked up again, but this time I saw something strange on the eaves, a shapeless shadow, crouching, as if watching me. I completely froze. Before I could react, the shadow quickly moved to the roof, disappearing from my sight. I ran away, with the rain and the sound of that drip still echoing in my head. Hello, I'm Felipe. I'm 33 years old. This story happened while I was walking down an old street where the houses were over 100 years old. I was returning from an event and decided to pass through a street that crossed the path. The houses were huge, with stone facades and tall windows covered by heavy curtains. The entire street seemed forgotten in time. As I walked, I felt a strange sensation, as if I was being watched. I didn't pay much attention, but when I passed one of the houses, I noticed a lighted window upstairs. There was a figure standing there, looking out. I stopped instantly. The person was still, but something felt off. I can't see details, just the silhouette. I thought about continuing walking, but before I could move, the figure moved away from the window. I sighed with relief, but as I took the first step, I heard a loud noise, as if something had fallen to the floor in that house. My entire body tensed. I looked at a window again, but now it was dark. I quickened my pace, trying to get away from there as quickly as possible. It was then that I heard a sharp knock, coming from a door. I turned back, and one of the street doors was open. In the dark, something moved inside, but I wasn't interested in finding out what it was. I never walked down that street again. My name is Mariana. I'm 24 years old. This story happened while I was returning home after visiting a friend in the neighboring neighborhood. The night was covered in a dense fog, so thick that the streetlights along the street left shapeless shapes. I had chosen a shortcut to pass through an abandoned park. I always heard stories about that place, but I never believed anything they said. He walked slowly, trying to see a little ahead, when he heard a low laugh. It seemed to come from somewhere in the fog. It wasn't tall, but there was something about it, something wandering, like it was floating through the air. I looked around, but I didn't see anything. The laughter stopped, but in its place came a whispered voice. It was quiet, almost impossible to understand, but it seemed to say my name. I was paralyzed. How could anyone know my name? Mariana. The voice called again, this time closer. My heart raced, and I took a few steps back, trying to stay calm. The park seemed darker than before, as if the fog was swallowing everything around it. It was then that I heard footsteps. They came from behind me, dragging, as if something was being pulled. I turned to look, but there was nothing. Even so, I felt a chill run down the back of my neck, as if something was too close. I started running. I don't know for how long, but I only stopped when I left the park and returned to the main street. When I looked back, I swear I saw the silhouette of someone standing in the park, shrouded in fog. I didn't wait to confirm. Since then, I have always avoided that path. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I feel like I still hear that voice, whispering my name in the silence. Hello, my name is Arthur. I'm 28 years old. This story happened to me a few months ago, while I was walking alone down a narrow, almost deserted street at the end of a cloudy night. It was one of those nights when the silence seems to weigh more than the air. I had left the office too late, as usual, and the last bus had already left. I had no other option than to walk to my house. The street was old, with uneven stone sidewalks and rusty street lamps that cast a flickering, yellowish light. The only company was the sound of my shoes echoing in the void. Something about that night felt off. I can't quite explain what, but there was a feeling in the air. The cold wind whistled through the cracks of the abandoned houses, as if whispering secrets that were not meant for my ears. As I walked, I noticed something strange. My steps seemed doubled. With each tap of my shoe against the stone, another sound echoed right behind. It was not the usual echo of narrow walls, but a distinct sound, as if someone else was following me just a few meters away. I stopped walking, holding my breath. The sound stopped. I looked back, but all I saw was the empty street, with shadows dancing in the flickering light of the street lamps. I felt a shiver run up my spine, but I laughed at myself, trying to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks. I continued walking. Step after step, the sound returned. This time, stronger, closer. The sound was almost wet, as if whoever was behind me had soaked shoes. I started to quicken my pace, but the sound accelerated along with it. I reached a corner and, without thinking, turned abruptly into an even narrower street, flanked by high walls and covered in moss. The air there was heavy, humid, almost unbearable. Along the way, I noticed something peculiar, an old, dark wooden door, half open, with a small lantern suspended, swinging in the wind. At this point, my breathing was uneven, and I felt a mixture of taste and curiosity. Behind me, wood had stopped again, but the feeling that something or someone was watching me was almost palpable. Without thinking much, I approached the door. When I pushed it, it creaked, revealing a stuffy, dark interior. There was a dusty room there, with antique furniture covered in white cloth, and a bittersweet smell that seemed to come from long-extinguished candles. As I investigated the place, I noticed that the sound had returned, now echoing inside the house. It was impossible. I was alone there. I approached a cracked window and, looking out, saw something that chilled me to the bone. On the narrow street where I was just moments ago, a hooded figure was standing. I couldn't see her face, but she seemed to be looking directly at me. I tried to open the door to get out, but it was locked, as if it had never been opened. I heard the sound of wet footsteps walking up the stairs. There was no one there but me, or so I believed. Then the lamp outside went out, and the figure disappeared into the darkness.